So today's topic that we're going to be talking a little bit about is success. And not only success, but we're going to talk about failure, because sometimes like talking about success can kind of affect people a certain way, and it's hard to kind of capture all the different concepts around success. And so maybe it's a little bit easier to talk about the idea of failure to kind of get some clarity around that too. So we'll start off with an opening question. The opening question is pretty simple, and that is, what does it take to become successful? So if you were to look at this, and if somebody came to you and they were to ask you, what does it take to become successful in real estate? Like, what would be your answers to that? Like, as you started to think about the responses, if you were to say, okay, what are the top 3 things that need to happen for someone to become successful? And maybe you would look out and you start to see the people who are successful in real estate, and you would start to think, okay, what are the 3 things that I can see that are common between the people that are successful versus the people that aren't successful? And it's not too hard to start to kind of break down this idea of success. And I think a lot of people, when they get into real estate, they're looking for this road to success. They're trying to find the pathway to get to where they want to go. Now, they have some clarity about where they're currently at. So there's a location where you're sitting at currently in your business. And to get some reality behind it, it's not hard to look at the math. If you're going to take the numbers and start to say, okay, where am I at currently in my business? That gives you some clarity about where you're currently sitting. But then the question is, where do you want to go? So if you start to decide, all right, there's this place I want to get to in my business, what will it take for me to get from where I am to where I want to go? And you being able to determine this will be an interesting conversation as you start to break down the steps to get to where you want to go. And you'll find many people that talk about it. Like you'll find a lot of people that will talk about the road to success. But the question is, will they guarantee it? It's interesting, if you were to ever jump on a Facebook group, or if you were to ever enter a large gathering of real estate professionals, if you were to ask questions about, this is what I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to get to this place, and I'm trying to help my business go in a certain direction, you're going to have a lot of people quick to tell you what they think that you should do. So you get a lot of quote unquote coaching advice from people who are very fast to tell you all the things that they feel that you should be doing in your business and what it will take for you to become successful. Yeah, what I find interesting is a lot of those people who are quick to suggest, they really aren't doing all the things that they're going to suggest that you do. And sometimes if they do suggest things, maybe it's not exactly working as perfectly as they think in their own life as they would like to sell it to you on. So what happens is they try to pitch you these ideas of what they feel success looks like. But in the end, will they really guarantee it? Like, how many people will guarantee that if you follow their path, you will for sure have success? 100% guaranteed. And I would say most people there's going to be some restraints around it. Like, you're going to have some parts of their training that say, well, it just depends, because if you have to do these different things, and if you do these things, then you'll have success. I remember as a new agent, I'd interviewed at a company when I first got my real estate license. There was a company locally that advertised, they guaranteed 6 figures. So if you worked with them, they guaranteed a 6-figure income. Now, if you went and talked to them, you found out really quickly that there was a lot of fine print in that guaranteed 6-figure income. There are a lot of things that they said, well, the 6 figures is guaranteed if this, and if this, and if, and there was a laundry list of different things that were required for their guarantee to kick into place. So as I started to think about that, I started thinking about, well, you got a lot of places that talk about success, but then very few, if any, guarantee success. So what about the opposite side of it? Like, what if you were to look at failure? Are there certain things that guaranteed will always create failure? What are the things that, for no matter what, they would always create failure? So I started to try to determine what would be this recipe of failure. Like, if you were to have the perfect recipe to create failure 100% of the time, every single time, what would be that recipe for failure? And I would say that the recipe for failure is pretty simple. that the guaranteed route to failure is inaction. So if you don't do anything, I guarantee you won't find success. Because if you don't show up, and if you don't do work, and if you're not doing effort, then you are committed to not doing anything, then you will not get anything. Because that's just how it works. So no amount of inaction will create any sort of success. But I guarantee that if you have inaction, you will have failure. That's how it works. So you start to think about that, and you think, okay, well, if the guaranteed route is failure, so I started to look at that, and I started to say to myself, okay, so if the guaranteed route to failure is inaction, then the thought is, well, most people, I would say it's pretty safe to assume that most people in our industry, most people in real estate, have a fear that maybe real estate might not work out. Like there's this inherent like I don't know, and maybe it's me, and maybe it's just some of the people that I know. But I would say that a part of my brain that at times when things aren't going right, or I'm starting to find some sort of streak of bad luck, or I'm feeling off, or I'm feeling stuck, or I'm feeling I don't know. It's just like I just feel a little bit. It's just not happening like I thought it was going to happen. There is this voice that I start to hear and maybe that voice is always there, but that voice it's louder, and that voice is, maybe this isn't for you. Now, in the beginning of real estate, that voice was a lot louder because as I was not having success to start out, it was really easy to start to feel like, man, I've got a lot of stuff to get straightened out. But even in today's world, even in the last couple of years, there are times where I'm like, is this really the best? Is this really the best? I mean, what if I got a guaranteed job, or if I got a quote unquote real job? What if I work somewhere else where I have like a guaranteed pay, or maybe some sort of other upside, and maybe it's a different industry, and I don't know what the answer is, but maybe there's something about this concept. So I would say that most people in our industry, they fear that maybe real estate won't work out. And especially for newer agents, like there's like, well, I'm going to get into real estate. I hope I hope it works. I hope it goes like I want it to. But a majority of people will accept the long failure rather than the short one. And what I mean by that is, we talked about how inaction is the guaranteed route to failure. So if you don't do anything, you are guaranteed failure. So there are people who are willing to commit to the long road to failure, which is inaction, versus any sort of effort that might create a short-term failure. So think about that. So today, are there things that might seem too fearful to do because maybe you might not succeed at it, so there might be some failure around it inherently, that's how the feeling is. So the thought is, well, I'm just not going to do that stuff because, like, what if it doesn't work out like I wanted it to? Well, if you don't do anything, it will also not work out for you either. It's just you might not see those results of failure until later on. But people are quick to, when I say quick, they'll like sign on for that path, the path of inactivity for the guaranteed failure. And that was like there's like some comfort around that for some reason. So the majority will accept the long road to failure versus any sort of effort into the short-term failure, which is like really odd when you think about it, because if you know you're on a path that's going to always turn into failure, but you're okay staying on it because it just kind of lulls you to sleep into this pathway of non-success. So if you were to look at it, there will be times when things just don't go as planned. Guaranteed in your business, there will be times when things just don't go as planned. And learning is experiencing the same circumstances, but with a different behavior. So if you have certain circumstances, and if you're not changing your behavior, then you're in trouble, because if your behavior hasn't changed, then no learning has happened. So you start to look at that process. You start to think, okay, Well, I'm going to be focused on like moving my business forward. And so I've got to be doing what I need to help like get the success that I need. Now, there's a lot of people who are quick to like stay on this path of inaction. And staying on inaction is not going to get you to where you want to go. In fact, this recipe for failure, inaction is the guaranteed main ingredient of having no success. So if you don't do anything, you'll guaranteed have failure. And if you try to do everything, you'll also have failure because you can't do everything. So if you're trying to do everything, you inherently are going to be overwhelmed. And when you're overwhelmed, then when people are overwhelmed, they don't do anything. So you're back to the inaction thing. So by not doing anything, you're going to have failure. By trying to do everything, you're going to be overwhelmed and not do anything, which will go back to the inaction. If you do things for short bursts of time, like if you're just going to say, you know what, I want to do this for this little bit, and then this little bit, and then this little bit here and there, and there's inconsistency around it, and you're not staying the course long enough, then you're going to have failure as well, because you're not staying with it long enough to experience the successes, because your thoughts of when things should be happening on the time frame that you've created might be different than what the real time frame is for success. It's like you getting frustrated because a seed hasn't come out of the ground yet because you think it should have come out of the ground already. And so you're too frustrated by how long it's taking for the seed to grow, so you stop watering that seed. And that's your call because you stop doing the effort to get the results of the seed coming out of the ground. Maybe you're just a lone ranger. So being a lone ranger, that's another recipe for failure, because if you want to do everything by yourself all the time, then you're going to naturally not know everything that you could and should know to get the results that you want. And so if you're continually doing everything by yourself and you're committed to making the same mistakes, and if you're committed to learning from just the mistakes that you make instead of learning from others, then you're going to be committed to having failure. And then lastly, another recipe for failure is just staying the same, which would be kind of an effort of inaction, because action would create a better version of you. But if you stay the same and you refuse to change and grow, and you expect that everything else should bend to your will, and you just want to show up as the same person every single day, then that's failure as well, because it's inherently you're fighting the growth that you could have. I would say that people who commit to that, they are very short-sighted, and they don't understand how to get their life into a better place. So they're so committed to just remaining the same person they've always been. And if you're going to be committed to being the same person you've always been, then you can just sign yourself up for long-term failure. But again, the number one thing that will create failure is inaction. So you not doing anything is guaranteed to give you failure. And you committing to not doing anything for a long period of time just gives you a chance to have failure later on in a longer period of stretch. And versus just stepping into failure and just realizing that in reality, failure is not the opposite of success. It is actually part of success. And if you want to experience success, you have to be committed to experiencing failure on a continual basis. And failure is actually one of the main ingredients to help you get to success. But if you want to commit to just having failure, then you'll just do nothing, and you are guaranteed to have those type of results.